Really, it's still not good enough. Oh, wait. No. Come on, man. I don't know what's wrong with my internet. I'm gonna have to drop the bitrate even lower. You know, I'm gonna have to go to 2,000 kilobytes, bits per second. I literally am. Oh my god. Still not good enough? No, okay, I think we're reasonable. This is probably gonna look like dog. This is really pushing the limits of the AV1 encoder. I'm still dropping frames. Wait. I need to restart the internet, but I can't. Thank you. Wow. Thank you, ISP. I'm so curious to see. Like, it has to look dog ass. I don't know. Let's put something on screen. Oh, that's the Japanese. Just trying to see how this looks. Hate trying. You think I would end it by now? Pause. Okay. Now I want to see how this looks. Honestly, wow, AV1's kind of crazy. That looks way better than I thought it would for 2,000 kilobits per second. Okay. So, the 9070 and 9070 XT have been officially announced. Finally. And I have a couple, I have a lot of interesting things to say, essentially. I'm gonna pull up image. $600. Pretty good, I would say. In my video, I said that I would be okay with 650, but I've watched all the sort of announcement content. I've watched Hardware Unboxed. I've watched like Linus Tech Tips and Daniel Owens and all the usual suspects. And for the most part, everyone was pretty happy about it. You know, it was pretty good. But I want to specifically talk about Hardware Unboxed. So I need to actually switch accounts. Why is this being recommended to me? This is the Japanese only account, excuse me. I want to specifically talk about Hardware Unboxed because they had a very interesting take
over the 7.
And at first I really didn't get it, but I think I get it now. Well, I at least see where they're coming from, you know. So basically their take was this is going to be very sort of like a lukewarm to positive launch, lukewarm to positive type of video review. They're not sure if this will really sell well or get them much of anything in the long run. They say, and they are correct about this, that in the past, AMD has been 20% better performance per dollar than Nvidia, and it didn't sell well. And that is true. That is very true. However, and so they're saying that, and so they're saying it doesn't really matter how this card looks, it's just bound to fail again, is what they kind of implied, because, you know, we've already seen this and tested this and it didn't work. You know, they said they talked to like a retailer and they said, you know, once we hit 30% cheaper than Nvidia, then that's when the cards started to move. But a few things. Previously, when they hit that 20% better performance FPS per dollar, it was at a higher end card. So it was at something like the launch 4080 versus the 7900 XTX. So that was $1,000 versus, or sorry, yeah, it was $1,000 versus $1,200. And I was watching their podcast to sort of get a little more insight, and they said basically this. I think it was Steve. He said that, you know, no one's going to pick that $1,000 card versus the $1,200 card, because at that point, once you're so high into the market range like that, once you're already at $1,000, an extra $200 isn't unheard of. And that's true. That's 100% true. Because like that's exactly how I was for my 58. You know, like I could have gotten an MSRP model, but I was like, you know, I'll spring for like the $150 model more, just because I like the way it looks and it, you know, it's nice and it'll stay cool. So that's 100% spot on, I believe. However, when you go down, and they acknowledged this in their podcast, but they just didn't seem to like. They acknowledged it, but they didn't seem to consider it. Hardware Unboxed basically said that once you get down to $600, like around that price, $100, $150 more dollars is a lot more. You know, it's a larger percentage of the overall amount that you're spending versus if you're spending $1,000 or $1,200. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you're looking at, you know, the 9070 XT giving 20% better FPS per dollar versus the 7900 XTX at launch giving 20% better FPS per dollar. Those are technically the same thing, but they're not quite the same. And also, this is the even bigger thing that is the real big reason why I really don't agree with this video. And this perspective. AMD has the biggest reason why anyone was legitimately comparing the AMD card and the Nvidia card and not just automatically buying Nvidia because they don't even know the AMD cards exist, which I think is a problem that they have, is because of DLSS and ray tracing. There's no getting around it, obviously. It's repeated a billion times. The dead horse has been beaten so many times, over and over and over. The Nvidia card is better at ray tracing. In the past, the 7000 series, the 6000 series, it was always much better at those two things. FSR at 1440p, I'm going to be honest, never used it. Never used it because it was bad. Don't care if it was 3.1, don't care if it was 3, don't care if it was 2 points, whatever, I don't care. It was never good, at least at 1440p. There's just not enough detail for it to do anything. And ray tracing, it got a lot better with the 7000 series. The 6000 series basically just added, you know, so like you can run Indiana Jones or whatever ray tracing games are required, like games that have ray tracing required. And that's fine for that. 7000 series was a lot better. It's not like, you know, it was around a 4070 Super ray tracing performance for the 7000 series, depending on which card you got. But that was still significantly behind. Like, you would just get pummeled. It would get like 50% worse sometimes in really heavy loads. But AMD closing this gap a lot. I mean, like, look at this. Where is the XT? AMD closing this gap so much. These two gaps, these two big things that really stopped people from buying an AMD card when they were actually comparing both cards. The ray tracing and the upscaling. Both of these things are going to be drastically improved. Like, even the base FSR things that we've seen, we've got a decent amount of footage at CES. We had a few slides from AMD and a couple of like actual motion things. And it didn't look perfect. I mean, but it was 4K performance mode. So 4K balanced, 4K quality, hopefully, I'm really hoping 1440p quality looks good as well. But it is leagues, like, undeniably, FSR 3.1 to FSR 4, leagues better. So that gap has been closed a little bit, or potentially a lot. At the worst, just say it's a little worse than DLSS, or, noticeably worse than DLSS, but it's not bad. That is still a huge gap that has been closed between NVIDIA and AMD. And then obviously you can see this slide right here. The ray tracing, I think, is going to surprise a lot of people. It is very considerably better. And I think it's a little worse than I predicted it would be, how it would like actually shape up to a 5070 Ti. But still, if we can find this slide, hold on. Do they not have it or no? They do. 57, RX 90, 70, 50. They spelled slide. Short videos. So where is it? Here it is. I'm gonna have a virus from the website. So here's the slide that shows how it compares to a 5070 Ti. And I'm just gonna say it, these are spot on numbers. This is on par with internal AMD testing that got leaked and stuff going all the way back to January. So unless AMD is lying to themselves about internal testing data, I don't think that this is false. It wouldn't make sense. So as you can see here, in like Cyberpunk, that's kind of bad. Like 19%. It's not the end of the world, but it is still a difference. But most of these, like once you start getting over to here and stuff, I mean, what is this? 7%? 8%? So they're showing one game where it's significantly above that, and who knows, this might have been path tracing. But it probably isn't. So either way, this is good enough for most people to where I would say that gap as well has also been pretty significantly closed. I mean, think about it. If you're getting 60 FPS, are you really going to notice like 2 or 3 FPS more on an NVIDIA card when you're ray tracing? Probably not. I wouldn't. I don't know about you. Maybe you would. But I can't really notice the difference between 90 FPS or let's say like 70 FPS and like 74 FPS. Not reliably. So we have both, put it this way, both ray tracing and upscaling. Two major sore spots for Radeon cards has been, I would say, significantly diminished. And that's not so much to do with NVIDIA, that's more to do with AMD, you know, and how, what level of competency these features were at before. So yeah, you have 20% better price to performance, which they've done in the past, but also they have diminished these two things significantly, a very good amount. So that is where I don't agree with this hardware unbox video and their overall take right now, where they're saying this isn't good enough, this is kind of mid, is what they were basically saying. They said lukewarm multiple times in, I think, this video, if not the podcast. I think that 20% better FPS per dollar on top of very comparable ray tracing performance, on top of a slightly worse upscaler that a lot of people aren't going to notice. Because, you know, people can barely notice the difference between ray tracing on and off. Like, I think that this will legitimately be a good card. It'll legitimately be a very good product. Unlike what has happened in the past. I also wanted to pull up this other video because I just watched this like a second ago, and holy shit, it was crazy. So if you aren't subscribed to Moore's Law is Dead, you really should be. This guy only has 200K, and it's kind of crazy. He's like a very spot on leaker. He has very deep connections with many sources in basically everything. And I mean, if you want a little bit of proof, all the way back last year, he was leaking performance that it was basically all spot on for this 9070. $499 to $599 MSRP. Ray tracing performance, huge gains, better, you know, rasterization performance. He basically got almost all of it right. Like, the only thing that he didn't predict was the cards being so similar in price. But basically in this video, what it goes over is Blackwell stock is not getting better. No time soon. Not even, like, it has the potential to where this probably won't happen, but we were probably at least like 5 or 6 months out for Blackwell being like, you can actually just go and buy a 58. That's a long time. Now that's pretty likely. What's a little less likely is that this could last for like the whole year. Now, I don't know how much I believe that part. Like, at some point, I feel like the supply has to meet the demand, right? Or people just give up. But yeah, I mean, if you want a 5090, bro, I'm convinced that that will definitely be just unobtainium forever. So if you got one of those in the 2000 range, dude, you're gonna be able to keep that shit for like a year and a half, 2 years, and sell it for the same fucking price that you bought it for. Same inflated price that you bought it for. That was very interesting. Even the 5070 is like, ugh. Even though we are a week away, basically, retailers have said they haven't gotten nothing. And on top of that, the fucking 5070 is probably gonna be like 600, 650, which is just boom, like mind blown. Horrible. Imagine paying $650, $600, dude. I can see the Reddit posts. Just got my 5070, and it's like a $150 over MSRP model. I'm like, oh god, bro. Oh. Yeah. He also did say that the 9070 series is probably going to go up in price. Right now, AMD is kind of holding off the tariffs, but eventually they're gonna probably catch up. They've already kind of caught up to Nvidia. But in like April, he said that they're probably gonna catch, at least for the US. This is the only W I will give Euro Bros. Okay, I cannot tell you how many fucking comments I saw on my one video, on my prediction video, that were just like, in my country it's going to be $1 trillion. I'm like, okay, dude. Well, the fucking 5070 Ti is going to be $1 trillion and $1.1 trillion. So like, I don't know what you want from me. Your whole market is fucked. Like, go complain to your government. What else? So I want to talk a little bit about the 9070 as well, the non-XT model, because this is something that's pretty universally like being shit on. And yeah, like, yeah, $50, but there are some things to consider, and you can consider these things, and if you still want to shit on the price, then that's fair. That's fair. Number one, the way that these cards are manufactured, every single card, they want to be an XT model. They want it to hit 3.1 gigahertz or whatever, the boost clock is for the XT model. They want it to push it to 304 watts. And they want to have, all of the compute units intact. That's the goal. However, with silicon, it's not always that simple. And you get rejects. You get pieces of silicon that will not hold the clock speed you want, even if it's on the same die, and that's exactly what's happening here. The 9070 is the exact same chip as the XT. It is the exact same chip, but it is just a chip that couldn't quite cut it to be an XT model. So you want to see what the rock bottom prices for these, like the absolute lowest that they could possibly go. Well, it's $550. It's $550. And I suspect for the 9070, the non-XT card, they're kind of really scraping. Like, really scraping. So there's that to consider. And there's also to consider, like, there aren't many to begin with. The yields, is what they're called, is very high for this piece of this node, this process that they're on, which is TSMC 4 nanometer. There are not many defective chips. It's estimated to be like 90% of the chips that are manufactured can be an XT model. So it's like they maybe in some world could have made the 9070 $100 cheaper, or like, minus 100 from the XT model. But there's nothing that they can really, like, they wouldn't be able to keep that in stock. It would be like, a lot of people are saying that for every 5 cards of an XT, they'll have one 9070, maybe. So consider it as basically the real card is the XT, and then, like, if you want to save a little bit of money, or maybe you need lower power limits or heat or whatever, then you can go for the 9070. And they have done this in the past. There was the RX 6800 and the RX 6800 XT. The RX, he goes over this in this video. The RX 6800, there were almost zero at launch, which is actually funny because I actually had one. Kind of funny to think about now that I'm thinking about it. The RX 6800, there was almost none of them available. The XT model was kind of the clear, like, you should just get that instead. And what ended up happening with the 6800 is AMD just sort of accumulated all of the chips that couldn't quite make it to be an XT model, and then they just kind of dumped them. For a good 2-ish months, I remember, probably, I'll say it's probably about 6 or 7 months ago, the 6800 was literally like $330. It was a crazy deal. My friend got one, and he's having a blast. $300 for that thing is wild. Such a good value. 16 gigs of VRAM, competing with a RX 6800. Competing with a 4070, which is, how much is this thing? $600. So it's literally like half price. Nothing could touch this at like $300 something. Nothing could even touch it. So he's happy. But I'm just telling you, that's what's going to happen with the 9070. It'll eventually be discounted because, as they accumulate more failed XT chips, they'll decrease the price a little bit. Which, I guess you could say, like, well, why didn't they just do that from the beginning? And that's a good point. But I just want to, say this is why it is. I mean, it makes sense. That's just kind of the reality of manufacturing. But yeah, I think that's about everything that I wanted to really talk about. God damn, AV1 so good. Book Twitch, I'm just saying. So yeah, overall, I do want to wait for benchmarks to just you can see that this graph is like this, but it's kind of another thing to see exactly how many FPS you'll get in exactly this in this game. I'm still a little bit on the fence if I want to sell my 5080 for a 9070. I probably will, because I realize that it's really more of a want than any type of need. I don't play video games anymore. I really don't. I can barely fucking finish one video game. I've been playing Silent Hill 2, and I'm probably not even gonna finish this game. I am almost certainly not gonna finish Star Wars Outlaws, but it was $30, so whatever, fucking fine. But I'm just saying, there's no way in hell I'm finishing this. I really just don't have time or just the want to play a ton of video games. So if I can make $200 off my 5080 and then support a company, support the underdog, which who doesn't like rooting for the underdog? And honestly, I like AMD's features better. Like the Nvidia app, I kind of yeah. So we'll see. We will see. Very interesting though. Very, 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 very interesting. That shit have been added.
Carson.
You mean I'm a Crinkle Pop?
Carson.
Hold on. Yeah?
Hold on. I'm trying to figure out how to look at this.
Josh, you know what?
You see this?
What are you doing?
Big Buck Bunny.
Zinky Zookle, Ziggy Boobum Beeblebop Meep Vorp.
Big. I think the Steam alias is changing.
Oh, okay. That makes
Oh.
sense.
I think I gotta be Big Buck Bunny.